everybody, it's your boy Jester James here coming at you with another YouTube video. Today we're going to be continuing our Rick and Morty forensics case. Today we're going to be talking about the PCAP analysis, and basically, contrary to the other videos, I'm going to be following out this layout directly from the dfrmadness.com website, and I'm going to be following along there with you, kind of showing you and giving you a little bit more context as to what's going on here, as I think it by itself is a tremendous resource. However, there's some things that for some of y'all who are particularly new to the field of digital forensics, there's some more stuff that ought to be explained and things along those lines. But basically, I don't want to take too much time just giving context and stuff like that. So let's dive right into it. We've got the PCAP file here, and I've already gone ahead and opened it up in Wireshark here. So we got Wireshark, and if you pop it open and you look already, you see there's a lot of, it's a big old PCAP file, exactly what you'd expect to see in a network capture. And I guess a little bit of preface to that as well. Usually when you're performing an incident response, most engagements usually don't have PCAP data or network data to this extent. And even if they do have PCAP, most of the times it's encrypted, and then you have to go and get the keys and decrypt it so you can actually read the data along those lines and things along those lines. So this is just an instance where we're learning just for the sake of learning, and it's still a really good way to get your feet wet in performing some forensics that you might not get to do on the day-to-day. However, still important to know and understand. So basically, you pop this sucker open in your favorite packet analysis tool. We're just using Wireshark just because it's standard, and you can see it's got 411,797 packets in this one capture. And obviously that's a lot of packets. So this is a massive file to really comb through. And even in itself, there's not too much for you to just go off of, and there's not too much that you can really do. There's different filters that you can apply towards there. You can go and potentially, we have some IP addresses. So if we want to try and look for this IP, go and do that. You can say, well, say destination IP. Well, IP equals. Just say that. There's one thing there. No results there. Could potentially be going either way. So basically you have this massive file. You see how it's already taken a lot of time just for Wireshark to even process it in itself from that GUI visual standpoint. So not much that we can do with this by itself. You can run some statistics. You can go and look at things along those lines. So you can see what addresses were resolved along those lines and things like that. Still nothing on our IP there. You can see, I could have swore I saw Shanghai, yeah, so there's some weird things there. Either way, it's just a lot, and there's nothing that you can concretely actually go and really dig into. But, yeah. So there's that. We do have some things that we can get, alright, the OS and the capture, Cali, okay. First packet, last packet. So there's just that, looking at it from that standpoint. One of the things that I do want to cover a little bit before going and following along here are some of the things that you should actually go and start to do, or if you're not doing already, is really trying to play around to see how you can go and identify things. And we will get into it a little bit here, but one of the things that you can easily go and see. So, I mean, I've got two boxes here. I've got a Kali box and I have an Ubuntu box, which the Ubuntu box is like the SIFT workstation that I had set up. So that's that SANS forensic toolkit installed on it. But one of the things that you can really kind of go and look at is you can go and actually try to capture the packets yourself, doing things that you know that you can actually kind of go and identify and do yourself. So this box, I had it. So I am using VirtualBox now. Had to switch over from VMware Pro, but we are using VirtualBox now. I think it's host only adapter I had before. 2.16856.101. Yeah, so then that gives this Ubuntu box an IP on this interface of 192.16856.101. So one of the things that you can go and do. So now these boxes are on the same network now. So host only adapter as well here. And pop open Wireshark. You can do it on either side. You'll see it pop up either way. I already did the exercise here, tested it out before, but I'm going to pop this open. And if we ping this box, you can see that show up right there. So here's it coming from this box here. You can see we're going, this box is running an ARP request. So basically what that means is it's tracking the IP address with the IP address. So this box is 101. So it's asking, so this box here, the IP is 102. So it's asking for the target IP address, which is 101. And it's basically associating this virtual machine's quote-unquote MAC address, because they're virtual, so they're not physical, with the IP address. And then you can see the ICMP request going along there. So what we did was we ran a ping request. So pinging a machine leverages ICMP, which is that Internet Control Message Protocol. I talked a little bit about that in a prior video. But simple protocol, it just tests, you can go and run a ping request, which is just that ICMP, to go and talk to other boxes, test if there's connectivity, test if a box is on, things along those lines. And one of the things that really you can see is these requests in Wireshark. So you can see ping reply, ping request, reply, request. And you can see it going from the source destination and going back and forth, and there's that. So there's a bunch of different things you can see in Wireshark. We're going to go into a TCP handshake as well that we'll get into when we actually look at the pack file. But that's just one of the things that I wanted to pop open Wireshark on these boxes to really go and showcase and show y'all is something that you can actually go and really look at when you're got your home lab or whatever set up, and as you're going and you're doing analysis, it's great to go and double check things that way. And well, let's get into it, as I'll show you as we go along. So right off the bat, there's one of the first things you need to do is have your workstation set up. So if you haven't had your SIFT workstation from the previous videos, get that spun up. I'll probably go and make a video on how to install SIFT on an Ubuntu workstation. If Hal haven't figured that out already. But right off the bat, so I've got my workstation here configured already. I've got my PCAP file over here on this. In this workstation here. It's on this case's mount. And so I just copied it over. So it's there. And you can see it there in the directory structure as well. And what you want to do is, the first thing you want to do is install Snort. So apt update, apt install Snort. So basically I'll just go back as to how that went. Here, so apt install Snort. You gotta use sudo because, or be a root user. Otherwise, you're gonna have a messed up configuration. Heck, I don't think it will allow you to install it if you do not have sudo privileges or you're not root. So sudo apt install Snort, exactly like it says here, and it'll do all the stuff. And it'll unpack all that stuff. And then the next thing you want to do is configure Snort exactly the way that it says here as well. So one of the things that it details here, so this is just getting details about that PCAP file. So it's basically telling you what IP addresses are in the file, what you're looking at, and you can see he highlights the different subnets and different octets of the IP addresses. And if you're not familiar with subnetting, there is a video I made on that. Go check that out, as it's a great primer prior to this. So with the Snort configuration, right, the command he runs is this sudo snort-c etsysnort.conf-t-ilo. And basically what that does is it allows you to have Snort get set up with the default loopback interface, and it also tests that as well. So I got that Snort successfully validated the configuration, Snort exiting, which is exactly what we're looking for as dictated by the post on this dfirmadness.com. And basically, if you haven't kind of put that together yet, it's not really detailing you how to install Snort or configure it in a way in which like you can actually go and leverage it in the full sense of leveraging Snort for the tool that it is. So I could also potentially make a video on how to install and set up Snort and setting it up in your environment so you can actually leverage it as an intrusion prevention system or an intrusion detection system, things along those lines, which is, Snort is a great tool, but we don't really get into that for our purpose in this video. So right off the bat, we'll move forward. Gotta keep popping these and moving around here. So to quickly understand the scope of the PCAP, use command cap infos to get it. So cap infos. And again, it's just going to give us preliminary information about the packet capture. Basically, it looks like the same thing that we saw in Wireshark a little bit earlier. We've got that Linux in here. We've got that first packet capture time, last packet capture time, number of packets, that 411797. And next, what we want to do is what we can have Snort actually go and read that packet capture for us, which is exactly what we're going to be using Snort for. So that command is snort-c, and then we're going to go to that snortconf file. And then we're going to have -r, that PCAP, -q, -k, none dash A, and it's going to read that out to the console. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have that output get print out to a snort.out file. Fatal error permissions. So got to sudo that. There we go. So here we have it. And you can already see some of the things that Snort does for us that really showcases why when you're reading through a PCAP file, tossing it into Snort is a pretty good way to do some analysis. So we have potential DNS spoof queries in there. We've got like web attack potential. It's classifying most of the data for us. Potentially bad traffic, it says. DNS spoof again. Scan UPnP service discovery. MS terminal server request. Got some ICMP pings. So we mentioned that a little bit earlier. How to kind of see that. Snort has that classification as well. We've got some pingage, which from what it looks like, what you can do is it could potentially be network reconnaissance information. So you could have it so it's pinging every single different subnet. So it could go from like .1 to .2 to .3. So like it could be like .115, .116, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. for pinging. There's that. So we've got that. We've got that file as well. So before analyzing results, let's talk about noise reduction. So I talked about that before. The Snort file by itself was massive, but that Snort T file, see the shell sort out. Ooh, WC. That might be a package. Exit out of that. WC. Yeah, that is not working. Potentially WC into. They might have changed it. Let's just do a real quick Google, figure out what's going on. Core utils probably not installed, so this is a fresh install. BT dubs, sudo apt install. Already installed. Okay. That's already installed. Okay. Not going to go too deep into that. But basically, all that command does is it gives you a word count for that, for this file here. So if we pop it open, we can just what was that file called? Alright, so we have 373 lines there. A few hundred alerts. So there you go. WC-L 256. So we have 373 lines. So mild diff. Not that big of a diff though. Also, did I just not? Okay, LOL. It's sort.out. I called it sort instead of snort. What happens if I do snort.out? Still 373. So I imagine that there's just a difference in snort versioning. But it says 256 is a lot easier to look at versus 411. We still have 373, so not that big of a difference in comparison to when this was initially made. So right off the bat, can we find evidence of hacking tools being made or being leveraged? So if we take a look at this. Let's see. So it says DNS spoof, UPnP. One of the first things that I did potentially go and look at, so you can see some of this maintaining the same reactivity. If we go to the right here, we can see those. We can see these ports too. So those ports changing there. Moving back, going down, going down, going down. 2.85 MISC activity, it says we have 564 ports over here. 194.6124.102, which actually there's that evil IP address mentioned from our previous analysis. So there's that. And then 4285.10, which I believe is our box. Yep. DC 4285.10. So we're already seeing some good stuff matching our analysis from prior. This here right here, so you're seeing some MISC MS terminal service requests. And it keeps going. So, sus. Here, I want to see those ports as well. 344, 723. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, so we've already seen a little bit of stuff there, kind of following based off of our previous analysis, that we can kind of go and detail the interactions between this Russian IP website and a lot things along those lines. And we already did a lot of analysis prior to detail how that goes about in a way. But right here, there's one flag that the site wants us to really go look at. Did I pass it? I don't think so. So right here, there's one. So here's that ICMP ping nmap. So if you're not familiar with a tool called nmap, nmap is a network spanning tool, network mapping tool as well, which really what you can see is how you can enumerate an attacker's environment and also use nmap to do a suite of other things. So we have nmap right there. Pop that open, you can get the main page for it. So here is a Kali pentesting box. And it basically entails a bunch of different kind of quote-unquote attacks that you can use. And there's TCP SYNAC, UDP RCP discovery. So some of these they're mostly scanning attacks that you kind of leverage. And what you can do as well, so before we were doing that ping, what if we ran nmap on this box? So let's say, oh, classic. We're getting there, gang. We're getting there. It's late in the night. So I've been doing this for a long, decent amount of time there. All right, there we go. So, look at these. We've got those TCP SS. So, reason why I chose SS, if you go back to that man page, outside of my goofs, because I haven't used Kali in a decent amount of time. So -SS is that TCP SYN Connect ACK window. So it's exactly what you're seeing here. So there's that SYN reset ACK. So it's exactly that TCP three-way handshake. A regular three-way handshake for that TCP should be SYN SYNAC ACK. However, if you leave it open long enough, it'll reset itself. So flags, reset, set. And that RTT to ACK the segment was very microscopic there. So you can also dig into that a bit deeper. So like if we go nmap-ss SYN and then RST, and this is like the nmap guide is great as well. But here's a nice one as well. What is the advantage of sending an RST packet after you're getting a response in a SYN? So leaving a connection in send and receive state will raise flags, as well as this is common denial of service attack. If you don't send and reset, the server will remain for up to 60 seconds and retransmit up to 5 times. So there's that. But basically, without going too deep into the weeds of the network protocols and things along those lines, because I know I don't want to go too deep into that, because I know y'all are on the relatively less in-depth side. But basically, get familiar with being able to go and just trying things out, testing things out, see what you see. And in our context, this is exactly what an nmap attack looks like from a packet capture standpoint. So that's cool. And the reason why I wanted to go and detail that is because it's exactly what you're going to be seeing from here as well. So if we keep going down, right, there's that nmap. Is this an internal system? We already went over that a little bit. So see how the data reduction helps. So going down here, and then those numbers I want to make sure I'm matching it up here. Yeah, 3389. So here it's going up by 2s, which is exactly what I think he's going to say. Nmap probe. The domain controller is a common tool. This is a key moment in kill chain. Look at the activity to see understand the whole picture. Minutes later in the PCAP, tremendous amount of data versus only a few lines of text in the alert's output. And we can see it right here. I've got it popped up. Data going, data going, data going, data going. Immediately after, you see a jump. Then it goes back. 2, 3. There you go. And then this is what's Snort classifies as a web application attack. And I think we have those IPs as well. Yep. So basically what you're seeing, it says rapid connections from an outside source to an inside source. So theoretically, he says there because potential RDP connections going on. And the reason why we say RDP is because that port is 3389. So if you're not familiar, 3389 port is used for Windows Remote Desktop protocols, Windows Terminal Server, RDP. So, and totally fine if you don't recognize that. I myself, the only reason I'm able to recognize 3389 as the RDP port is just because early on, especially when you're getting into this, you start to see trends and you start to learn the ports for common protocols. And if you want, you can go to like a common port table, pull up one that I use quite often. This one I actually printed out. There's got to be a better size of that. So this one's a good one. Okay. Gotta just view it here. So let's go 3.3. There you go. 3389, and it says terminal server, so that's remote desktop. And there's a lot of these extra ones that aren't necessarily massive, but some of the ones like, obviously, 20 to 21 FTP, 22 SSH, like we've already kind of familiarized ourselves with SSH as a protocol quite a bit from previous. 389 for LDAP. A lot of these 4.4s, 4.4.3, you know, that's HTTP over SSL, so HTTPS. 80 is just regular HTTP, and you don't necessarily have to have these memorized, but after seeing them often enough, they kind of repeat. So it says now we can use the IP address as a pivot into the data. And also, we already had that, so 194 4.80 24 That might be different, actually. I want to double check that. At 10.42.85.10. That's our DC. Alright, so we now have an indicator to work with. Let's table that for a moment and look at how we can explore large peak activity. TCP dump. And it details how to use TCP dump, which is basically kind of like it's a command line Wireshark. Wireshark has its own command line equivalent called T-Shark. However, TCP dump is a lot easier in order of the flags that you can leverage, and also it's just what he's leveraging here. So why not just follow along and see what he's seeing here. So I'm gonna exit out of that. No. Alright, so it's kind of similar to the Wireshark we were looking at. The only difference, so here, SYN, the dot is an ACK, so SYN, ACK. So there's R, SYN, ACK, SYN. And what he details here to look at, so the first thing to glance at is the date of the first packet. So the timestamp is not as useful as it could be. So let's try that again with the 1, 2, 3, 4 T's. So let's add that flag. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so there's the timestamp converted from over here. They're also bunched a little better too. So a full date time group can be obtained. So that's what that flag, the quadruple T's does. Interesting. Remote host 194.6124.102. 64.102. 24. Yep. 194.61.204.102. I don't think that's what I said. Okay. So what do most forensic tools log the time in? So we know the event took place in Mountain Time. So it took place in September, which makes it 6 hours behind UTC. This means that if you want to correlate this to local time, you need to subtract 6 hours from the time displayed. Some tools can be off, so that's a good preface there. Here we see the ICMP echo request and its related reply. That's easy enough to understand. The remote host sent a ping, and our domain controller replied. The screenshot, this is information leeches. The client should shore up during the recovery stages. We should not allow our machines to respond to pings to outside machines. Okay. So if we go in here, right, so there's that request. There's that reply. So this is exactly what he's talking about. And the reason why is because it's that remote address. It's an external source. So that is a solid remediation recommendation. Makes sense, right? You don't want outside or people outside of your network to be able to do internal recon to identify live and active IP addresses. So does this look like a standard three-way handshake for port 80 and 443? It says, no, this is not normal. It could be some error with the capture, but it's unlikely. So we see the remote host try to SYN with port 443, and then immediately sends an ACK to port 80. So the difference in the big thing there, and just to confirm as I toss this up on the big screen here, here's for that 443, and here's that 80. So the difference there, I mentioned it a little bit early, just quickly when we were looking at that port diagram, but 443 is HTTPS versus port 80 is HTTP. So the difference is, first, the SYN is going to be over a secured layer versus port 80 is not going to be over that secured layer of encryption for HTTPS. So taking a look at other three-way handshakes into the data, what we expect to see is a sequence number displayed followed by an active sequence. No, the increment of 1 in the handshake is due to the 1-bit flag being exchanged. Sign of TCP regardless. It is typical count because 1-bit flag typically being exchanged, and that 1-bit flag is. So when you're looking at this, right, you have to remember that what we're looking at is really at a lower level of data. We're looking at this data in terms of bytes as well. So a SYN versus a SYN-ACK is a different length because, say, the ACK in a packet as opposed to SYN-ACK, that's less data to have to showcase in a packet. I'm looking. I'm not too comfy with TCP dump. Full disclosure, I'm not a big network. I don't do a lot of network forensics. As you can tell, that's why we're going and following along with the blog post here. Our lengths here, they have 0 at the ends. I'm looking here though, 827, 50850, 5, 1024. So let's see where he's actually talking about. So sequence number followed by a 1. So there is no 1 there, exactly like he mentioned. If we go to another one, that should be a SYN-ACK. I don't even see that sequence number for that one there either. So I guess that's that one instance that he's kind of referencing. So here he has us run nmap, and then he's going to have us run specifically this nmap-n on port 3389. And you see the same signature prior. So what we can do, let's do it. So I'm going to pop open Wireshark again. Don't forget your sudo root privileges and all that jazz. Before I start it, I want to get that command queued up. I'm glad I just did that basic, because quickly got readjusted back into yield. Nmap land 3389. Also, I will be doing a lot more. I will be doing a series a little bit later on Kali and more red teaming or I guess quote unquote hacker tools that'll be based around a book that y'all can check out. But spoilers there, so I'm not going to get into it, but let's do this. 10.42.85.10. So the difference here actually, 192.168. I think it was 56.101, is these two machines are different. So I'm going to shrink this again down. I want to see. This buoy is 101, correct? Yep. Okay. Get that Wireshark again. I'm going to pop this open here. Now I got Wireshark open. Run that command. So there's that nmap there. We just saw it quickly go through there once. If you run it a couple times, you'll probably see it more. So let's do that. Really fat fingering today, guys. Really fat fingering. Alright, so there's that. I did that a few times. We should see a decent amount of it. So here we go. So here's that sin, reset ACK, sin, reset ACK, sin, reset ACK. And we do have a little bit of ARP in there in the middle. But basically we're seeing that same reset ACK as we see here prior. Scroll up. So there's that sin, ACK, reset ACK, sin. So it's not perfectly matched up, but it's there. And obviously, as we're kind of testing this out and we're doing this, we're not going to match it up perfectly because it's just the way and the nature of the way this has been executed. So he has some more screenshots here that details the differences of the flags for Nmap. But he says this is the exact same signature. Take a look at the odd activity again. It even includes the ICMPs. So why would an attacker send a single probe to 3389? And that's because, exactly as I mentioned before, 3389 is an RDP port. It's commonly known as an RDP port. So usually when you're using RDP on Microsoft specifically, like the specified port by default is 3389. And people can figure that out by going to showdown.io. And this is where kind of the time is sensitive for this in relation to this post. And there's a lot of different ways that I kind of was thinking of how I could kind of do this video, just because of the fact that there is a lot of sensitivity to the time and things along those lines. So like if we do enter this IP, it still has that flag. However, it's not as red flagged as prior. You can already see it's dropped. We go to relations. Go to details. Like obviously, look, there's mentions of it here. So you're already getting like context here for that IP and it being used for this case, this fake case. Which actually, it's funny because this is it's a real IP address. So I just think it's funny that whoever entity in Russia that had used this as a potential IOC, literally, now they're being used in this fake forensic case, and it's funny. I wonder what they're thinking. It must be fun. So keep in mind that if there are no detections for the IP address or hash, it does not mean it is clean. It simply means it isn't identified as malicious yet. So we select the Details tab. Note that the country at this IP address said that. Simply an admin using a VPN. And then it mentions Tor exit nodes. And then it does go and say, look at those Google results, which are different from what he has because this has been out for a decent amount of time. So it says this IP address. So assuming we're looking at this like 2 years earlier, this IP address has been seen conducting RDP brute force attempts. So seeing that activity, showcasing it as an RDP brute force is exactly what we are seeing, and it kind of verifies some of the details of what we were gathering. Let's go to the Relations tab. As it says, it's a must-see. So here's some of these, like DNS, XYZ, or blacklist.ipli.iu. Some of these have malicious or like 2, 1 flagged as malicious. I have some 3 resolutions, but also 10 referrer files. Can't get into that without without logging into VirusTotal. Can't do that either. You can set up a free account and kind of dig into that, but again, I'm just trying to follow along with this blog post the best I can and give y'all a little bit more additional context around to what we're looking at and kind of how you can do it yourselves. Okay, so here, and also just I would classify this as a bit more advanced than the earlier instances of analyzing the data that we had from like memory forensics to the disk images, where the disk images were relatively easy, the memory just a little bit harder, and now the PCAP is definitely, it's like the more data the better, right? But when you're looking at some of the data, it really, you get into the nitty gritty, and sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. But in our context here, we're just doing this for learning's sake, so again, I'm no expert. Y'all know that. I'm just here, just like y'all are. We're students here, learning our way along the lines of becoming better forensicators and getting more hands-on experience and getting our feet wet and doing whatever it is that we can get our hands on. So here it says Berkeley packet filters seems challenging at first, but it's really pretty easy to work with. BPF is used to select packets with particular flags. And then it recommends us to go and take a SANS course, which we ain't doing because that costs a lot of money unless you work for an organization that will pay for you to go and take that SANS class. But basically it talks about TCP dump even more. And then it talks about some of the more BPFs and some of the flags there. So like explicit congestion notification flags. And then it looks like this hex, I think. So now we can see SYN flag source from that cannot be seen by specifying that. So we're having the filter become TCP13 OX3F equals OX02. I'm going to run a quick Google search there. I love how it's just right there. Maybe some more context here. So here is a little bit. So to see affected packets with TCP dump, use a filter predicate. So it looks like these are the TCP dump filters specifically. And again, like I'm not really diving too deep into these because I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of time and also just trying to get as best as you can there. So there's that. So now we're seeing SYN flag source from the domain controller that cannot be seen. With that, by changing, yeah, so now we're including that filter. Which we can do. But he did it here and you can kind of see that there. But I just want to keep moving along here. So now this big TCP command string here. So obviously this the reason why I'm not diving into these, right? Like these commands, there's no point in really kind of diving into these because they only come up when you need them. And I'm not going to have you all memorize commands. It's not really helpful for us, but also at the same time, the only time that these are actually going to become useful for you is the more you do this. And we only have this one piece of data. So after you run this command once, I am not expecting y'all to actually go and repeatedly do this on and use the same exact commands. So if I run this, what do we get? I get 10.42.85.1.5.85.10. And that's from that case file. So also, interestingly enough, I'm not seeing the same exact results. So I'm not exactly sure why that is. So I'm not going to lie, as I'm sure you can already tell, I'm a little bit lost following along with these. Which, if you're following along and basically matching the same up with me, then that makes sense. Most systems. It's like, can you get these answers on your own? Yes, if we went and maneuvered around and we actually cared more. But this case is old, and also there's other things that I think would be better suited for us in the context of our learning. And y'all can always come back to this and redo it, up your game. As you learn more things, the better you'll get. I'm just not going too deep into this PCAP analysis, specifically because of the fact that I know for IR cases, it's not often that we get PCAP, so it's not entirely relevant. However, it is definitely a great skill to have, so that's why we're going and kind of getting our feet wet here. That way, when we do have PCAP, we're not sitting on our thumbs. So here is what we're going. So this command here, we're moving it around, and it's specifying for RDP because we're specifying the port 3389, which we didn't do prior. So let's paste that. So now we have, which is it's basically that flag that we had seen prior. And I apologize for this collapse here. It's just it's getting cut off. So I might as well try and move that so its length matched up there. Okay. So there's 3389. So these are potential RDP attempts because they're using 3389. And then we look at the handshakes. It says so then it says if we carve out all the packets where this host into a smaller PCAP, so let's do that. Let's just do one at a time. Also, y'all should not always be copying and pasting commands just because you see it on a website. Always make sure you understand the command. There's my disclaimer. I know exactly what this is doing because he details it, but also it's TCP dump. So we're moving that over to that case flag mentioned there. Right, and then host -w. So there's that, and that's in temp now. Sure, just because we're following exactly along. Just gonna move that and move it here. So there's that. And reduction in the data. So basically, a lot of that prerequisite like industry knowledge he's got, he tossed a crap load of command line foo in there, and we got a new PCAP file which is that this host host 194.cap. Alright, we don't have to open it up with TCP dump, so back to the land of the GUI. Which, to be fair, there are things that I do enjoy using the command line for, and then there's things that I do enjoy using a GUI for. Alright, so we can see this truncated it down a decent amount. We also see that port here. Pop it open, and now we're still matched up here pretty good with where he's going. So searching for keywords in PCAP. Potentially what you can do if we go to string packet bytes, and the reason why we're going into packet bytes is because it details things along the lines here. It's looking at a larger portion of the packet as opposed to specific parts of the packet. We're going to do strings because we're not typing in like hex or regex. And then it says interesting string, but let's say Russia. See what happens. The packet there, but let's see if we can see anything here. Let's see core updater. So here is something. HTTP. There you go, coreupdater.exe. So there we have a packet, and this basically shows source destination there. And if we scroll down a little bit more, theoretically, so it looks like that packet, we see that core updater file being downloaded, or at least the web page for it. And then here potentially is where it's being downloaded. Great place in the statistics menu. So basically, it just details a little bit of Wireshark and kind of a similar thing that I did in the beginning. Full request of the URI. I mean, I think we kind of went straight for it. I need to scroll up here. Which is that, yeah. There's the IP, 610.24.102, right? Yeah. And he's going to get to coreupdater.exe at some point. There it is. Okay. I'm jumping the gun there, but like you could see how like once you get into it, it's a lot easier to kind of jump in to see things when you have strings to really tug at. So there's that packet there, and I assume he's going to have us carve. Yeah, we're going to have to carve out that coreupdater.exe. So how would you go about doing that? One of the things that you can do, if you go here, you might have to, I think if you highlight it, but you also, you might just be able to go on that one. So there's a GET request there. If we go to File, it says Export Objects, HTTP. So that doesn't go through just the one packet and all of the entire packets here. There's a core updater file. It's in there a couple times. So I imagine that he did it once, and just to make sure that he didn't get it when he was building the test data, he had to download it again. So we can extract it here. However, I know that's malware, and we also did that in a previous video. So I'm not going to kind of keep going there, but you can get the gist here as to what's going on and how to follow along there. And this is also a great way to really go and do packet analysis the only preface and problem, it's not so much of a problem that I'd say here, is that when you're trying to do things along these lines, especially when you're working with packet captures, you have to make sure that the data you're getting, it's not oftentimes that you're going to have like HTTP. Most times there'll be HTTPS or whatever it is, it's encrypted. So being able to just export the object like this is not as easy as it is in this instance here. However, that course aside, this is still a great experience, and you can kind of see we're matching it up with the evidence that we have prior. And it just goes into file. It's just doing the same exact stuff that we kind of did before. And sandbox detonation, sure. I'm not going to get too much into that because we did do a decent amount of this stuff in the memory forensics video. We captured a decent amount of it. Joe Sandbox, sure. Like, you can toss it into Joe Sandbox. However, we just wanted to open up TCP dump, open up Wireshark, use those tools in the context of having our data here, and get to the point in which we got our packet captures slimmed down to be able to go and actually find coreupdater.exe in the packet capture. So real quick, I didn't go too in-depth, but I did go enough for you to be able to follow along and find that core updater file. And if you want, we can break down that command prior that cut the PCAP file down. But you can kind of break it down on your own as well. There's a lot of different tools that breaks down command lines for you. I guess the one thing that I'm still leaving here a little bit confuzzled with is this buoy here. So like if I Google that. Okay, not that. Like, this is what we gotta do all the time, right? And I'm doing this with you on the video. Like, again, like, proven to you, I don't know everything. And even when I have the data presented to me here, there's still stuff that even I am not entirely fully understanding of. But, you know, that's why I kind of like the way that we do these things together here, at least through these videos, where I'm not giving you everything, but I'm giving you enough that you can understand the general gist of things. And as you get to level up your skills, you can do more and you can understand more. All right, I want to fast track that. So where is that? That was called... Okay. Now, I know we are gone on very long. This is a very long video. Especially for how far deep we've gone into the PCAP file. But, nevertheless, I do want to make sure we can get at least this understood. Okay, here we go. So, IP filters, lit. So... Can I just Control V for this? I don't know why 13. Let's just go to OXC. Okay, there it is. So TCP 13 is SYN nothing else. So it's a TCP filter for... So it's a TCP dump, TCP filter for only SYN requests and nothing else. I swear that's what he says. You're now looking at every SYN packet. Okay. Duh. He says it right there, but that's just, you know, case in point as to why we have to go that extra level. I guess that kind of details the BPF as well, right? So this must be a little bit more detail on the Berkeley packet filters in themselves. But there's that. We follow along. We got a decent amount of our case text stuff done on our previous videos. But we did our stuff here. We did some PCAP analysis. We were able to find that core updater file and all that stuff. And we were able to go and leverage a couple boxes here. We even played around with Kali a little bit. But basically, recap, we played around in Wireshark. We played around in TCP dump. Overall, we tried our best to follow along with the blog post here on dfirmadness.com and the Case 01 PCAP analysis. I definitely hope you got something out of that. I know we didn't get, and I didn't dive down into the nitty gritty. And the reason why I don't necessarily dive down into the nitty gritty is because I myself am not comfortable enough to go dive down nitty gritty to the point of which, for me, in order to comprehend and actually explain protocols is an extent of which I highly suggest you all go. And if you want, go pick up the TCP/IP guide. I really should have like an Amazon link to go and like put that deets over there. But that TCP/IP guide, you can buy that book, but also the website is free and it is literally the book just online. And this is a phenomenal resource to really detail not just TCP/IP, but all of the different protocols, especially within the TCP/IP protocol suite. So DNS, DHCP, all the different protocols we mentioned in previous videos, but it also goes and details ICMP, and when you're looking at the packet data, you really understand what you're looking at. So if we go to the TCP/IP guide and I go to ICMP, right, we're looking at the packet through the packet data in Wireshark and things along those lines, but when we actually go into it, you can actually understand what you're looking at from the point of understanding the actual data you're seeing, like the type code. So like here is the ICMP message in like a box. Like this is a picture of it as opposed to the way that we were looking at it in Wireshark, right? I'm just going to use the TCP, this for example. Like you can see Internet Protocol version 4, transmission control protocol, source port, everything like the sequence number, ACK number. A lot of the details in here, flags, time to live, all of that is in the TCP/IP guide, and that's how nitty gritty you can really get down and dirty into forensics. But really, just you're not at that point. I wouldn't even classify it as forensics so much as you're actually learning the network stack, and you're getting a lot. You're getting that base knowledge of TCP/IP fundamentals that are very important that I'm not going to bother trying to make or cover a video about just because it's too dry, but also at the same time, a lot of it is stuff that is exactly prior, like I said, it's in that big book. So the reason why I highly encourage y'all to go and check this out and to really kind of go into some of these sections is because of the fact, especially you want to go into these sections on common protocols. So for example, we can go to, say, SSH. So like we have ICMP here. SSH is another one. It goes into with the Berkeley remote shell, but I don't even know if this search bar works, but we'll try it. It still has the application layer. I guess it doesn't have a specific section in a similar manner, but if you go to TCP, let's say, it definitely should have TCP, but it should have a, here's like UDP. It details the operations. It details the message formats, and it also gives you like the size. So like earlier into it, right, James from here was mentioning the SYN and ACKs, and he was mentioning the difference in the packet size and how there's a difference in bytes. I want to get to it specifically, and again, this video is definitely going over, but this is how nitty gritty. And again, I don't think y'all are too interested in it, but also at the same time, like this gets very very boring and very dry very quickly. But if you look at it here, he mentions this. So take a look at the other three-way handshakes in the data. What we expect to see is a sequence number displayed followed by an ACK of sequence +1. So the increment of 1 in the handshake is due to the 1-bit flag being exchanged. That 1-bit flag is literally like in this picture of a packet, right? This is UDP, but think of it as like TCP. More data is being added here. So the size in bytes would goes up. So like as you're adding by 2s the length data, it's a packet. Like computers have to have a certain byte size in order to actually kind of process that. And it makes sense why, because it's like the same thing with binary. 1s and 0s at the end of the day, right, is really just bytes as well. Because at the end of the day, right, all the computer's looking at is 1s and 0s. So like these packets, we're seeing them in English in the way in which you can see things like source IP, destination IP. But for the computer, you convert those into binary, and that's kind of how that size differs and things along those lines. But again, this is how like this stuff, I definitely find it fascinating. I do enjoy talking about all of this stuff, but it is really hard to kind of go and kind of be, there's no such thing as it really, I wouldn't classify myself, like I said, in any way as an expert, but I do like to kind of dive deep into this stuff and kind of explain it in a way in which from I understand it to kind of help y'all understand it. But as you can tell, my understanding from the point in which we get to this level is little to enough that I took a class in college. But at the same time, right, highly encourage y'all to check that out and things along those lines. However, I also preface it with the fact that it's not as practical to the real world as it would be in the context of us going and looking at things this way. And I say that from the context of an incident response analyst, where you don't often get PCAP or anything along those lines. However, I think we did a decent job here kind of getting our feet wet in the tools and being able to understand and work through data in a way in which we can actually perform it and get some results, which was really great. And there you have it. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any criticisms or you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment. But again, I did have that prefix and mention prior. Wasn't going to be going too deep into this, but I did want to just get here to the point in which we could follow along to an extent to getting to our core updater.exe within the packet capture. And that'll be the wrap up for our Rick and Morty forensics. I do know that there's a couple other things that you can look at. There's auto runs, there's event logs. However, I kind of want to move past this case just because of the fact that it's already a little bit old and dated a little bit from there. Not to discredit or discount the data at all. Feel free to go dive deeper. However, there's other videos that I think would be more practical, more fun, or a lot more hands-on, and we can kind of cater towards that as well. And I'm not going to spoil anything that's on the way, but I just want to get these Rick and Morty videos out of the way, and it'd take me a decent amount of time just because I kind of mentioning these and recording these right. At the end of the day, we're really just following with what our pal here at the DFR Madness folks did and how he went about that. So big shout out to them. Thank you for like following along with me, and shout out to them for like having this up here and allowing folks like ourselves to kind of get experience and leveraging tools that otherwise you would have no reason to really leverage. So again, thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.